Men, while most people were distracted, exhausted, scrolling, arguing, and half asleep to what's going on around them, there is a question rising again in America that people thought was buried in the past. Could the United States bring back the draft? Now let's start with the truth, because on this channel, we do not build on fear alone, and we do not build on fantasy alone. We watch, we discern, we test, and then we speak. So here's the plain truth. There is no active military draft in the United States right now. Nobody has announced that your son is getting called up tomorrow. Nobody has announced mass consumption, and registering with the Selective Service is not the same thing as being drafted. The Selective Service system itself says that clearly. The same official system also says the infrastructure still exists, and in the event the nation returned to draft, it already has the sequence of events prepared for how it would happen. That means the machine was never really destroyed. It was erased. It was put on standby. And that is where the conversation starts getting serious. Because almost all male U.S. citizens and male immigrants ages 18 through 25 are still required by law to register with the Selective Service. And now, after the fiscal year 2026 National Defense Authorization Act, the government is moving towards automatic registration instead of putting the burden on individual men to sign up themselves. Selective Service says this change was mandated by law in December 2025 and is set to be implemented by December 2026 through integration with federal data sources. So let that sink in. The question is not whether the system exists. It does. The question is not whether the government still tracks who can be pulled into the system. It does. The real question is this: under what conditions would the government decide to use it? And that is the part men should be paying attention to. Because when people hear draft, they imagine some dramatic announcement, a siren, a presidential speech, a giant flashing moment where suddenly everybody knows. But systems like this do not begin with sirens. They begin with legal framework. They begin with databases. They begin with readiness. They begin with normalization, and they begin with people saying, calm down, nothing is happening, while the structure underneath is quietly being strengthened. And right now, one of the biggest developments in this automatic registration shift. Again, let me be careful. Automatic registration does not mean a draft has been activated. It does not mean all-out conscription is around the corner. But it does mean the government is making the registration easier to populate and administer. That is a real change. That is not conspiracy. That's not rumor. That is coming from the Selective Service itself and from reporting on the new rule under review. Now, here's where this gets even more interesting. A lot of people have been talking about the draft recently, not just because of the registration change, but because of the border war atmosphere. The Middle East has been tense. Reuters reported today, April 21st, 2026, that a fragile U.S.-Iran ceasefire was nearing expiration while tensions escalated after the U.S. seized an Iran-linked tanker near Sri Lanka, with uncertainty hanging over whether talks would continue. Reuters also reported yesterday that uncertainty still clouded new peace talks as ceasefire deadline approached. That does not automatically equal a draft, but it absolutely adds fuel to public fear and public speculation. When public fear rises, this is when men need to separate three things: what is true, what is possible, and what is propaganda. So what is true? There is no active draft. All volunteer force is still the system in place. Selective Service says plainly there is no draft at present. What is possible? A draft is possible because the legal and administrative structure still exists. And Selective Services lays out how a return to the draft would work. It says that if the United States returns to the draft, there's a sequence of events already prepared. It also states that in the event of a national emergency requiring a draft, it would support manpower needs. So what is the propaganda? Anything that tells you registration automatically means induction. Anything that tells you there is already a live draft and there is not. Anything that says a regulation can change by itself means troops are about to start kicking in doors and hauling men off this week. That overstates what the evidence supports. So now, I want to talk about the psychology of this for a second. Because for decades, many Americans have lived like the age of sacrifice is over. Like large-scale national demands are for history books. Like war is something outsourced to professional class, to a volunteer class, or to other families, to other men somewhere else. But the continued existence of Selective Service is a reminder that the state has never completely let go of the idea. Under the right circumstances, it might claim body, labor, time, skill, and service. That is why this topic matters spiritually too. The word draft carries the idea of being drawn out, pulled from ordinary life into service, pulled from comfort into conflict, pulled from routine into obedience. And while governments can issue drafts in the political sense, there is also a deeper truth here for men who follow Christ. Whether or not a nation ever drafts you, this world is constantly trying to draft you into fear, passivity, cowardice, confusion, lust, distraction, and dependence. So the question is not only, could America draft men? The deeper question is, who already has your mind? Who already has your habits? Who already has your obedience? Because some men are waiting for some future emergency while already being conquered by present weakness. That is where the watchman call comes in. A watchman does not wait until the wall is breached to start caring. A watchman does not make preparedness because the trumpet has not sounded yet. A watchman understands that by the time the emergency is too obvious to everyone else, the time for easy preparation is already over. And that is why I think this story matters, even if a draft never happens. It matters because it reveals the nature of the age that we are living in. We are living in an age of increasing systems, increasing surveillance, increasing geopolitical tension, increasing dependence on centralized administrations, and increasing willingness to treat the individual as a line in the database. Automatic registration fits inside that larger pattern. Again, not proof that the draft is imminent, but proof that the state continues to refine the mechanism by which eligible men are tracked for possible future use. And if you're wise, you do not panic at that. You prepare. Spiritually, you prepare by making sure your house is in order. Mentally, you prepare by learning how to think clearly under pressure. Practically, you prepare by becoming the kind of man who is not helpless when the world changes fast. Because here is another hard truth. Even if there's never a military draft, there may still be an economic draft, where inflation drafts your labor. There may still be a digital draft, where systems pull your data, track your patterns, and sort your life. There may still be a moral draft, where culture tries to constrict your children into confusion. There may still be a spiritual draft, where the age demands you to bow to lies just to keep your place in the machine. So no, I'm not here to tell you tomorrow the draft begins. That would be dishonest. But I am here to tell you this. The system exists. The registration requirement exists. Automatic registration is coming. The legal framework for a draft still exists, and the global tensions are giving this conversation fresh energy again. That should be enough to wake up serious men. For those asking, what would have to happen for a real draft? The key point is that the United States will need more than just automatic registration. Selective Service says there is no draft at present, and reporting on the new change notes that reinstating a draft would still require additional legal actions by Congress and presidential authorization. The government is not at that point today, but the existence of the roadmap is why people keep coming back to the issue every time the world becomes unstable. So here is my challenge to the men watching this. Do not be ruled by internet panic. Do not be lulled to sleep by official claim. Do not become sensational, and do not become soft. Become sober. Because a sober man can read the times without losing their mind. Sober men can tell the difference between a policy shift and a war order. Sober men can recognize when a structure is being strengthened, even if it has not yet been used. Sober men can prepare their hearts, prepare their homes, their minds, and prepare their bodies without becoming fear merchants. That is the path. And I will leave you with this. Nation does not need an active draft to show you what direction the age is leaning. Sometimes the warning is not in activation. Sometimes the warning is in preparation. And right now, America is showing you that the Selective Service system is not dead. The registration net is being tightened through automation. And the world around us is unstable enough to make people ask this question again for a reason. Watch, pray, discern, prepare. Because even when there is no draft at present, wise men still ask what kind of world is being built around them.